Hello, this is Connor Super Goofy, and welcome back to another video where I am going to be doing a retroactive review of an album that I've already reviewed, which is Theodore Dog WIBI. Um, yeah, after my last video last night where I discussed how Theodore Dog WIBI should have been my last album instead of me pushing forward and continuing and making four more albums, including a collab album. I After I made that video, I got the idea, why not re-review Theodore Dog Weeby retroactively? And not do it the lazy way either, the Anthony Fantano way where I just go over all the tracks and give it a score at the end. I thought I'd do it the Nervinx way, do it by making a tier list of all the songs and rank them from 0 out of 10 to 1 out of 10 because Theodore Dog Weeby, like I said in that last video, isn't my best album in any way. But there are some pretty good songs. So there are also some huge duds on here as well. So I figured why not rank them all, starting with the track Burned. Let's just get into it. Burned. So this track is we start out with a huge burst of energy. The vocals are highly energetic. The beat is highly energetic, and we also have a pretty decent verse from Mr. Marquez. But the mixing on this song is absolutely horrendous. Um, the mixing makes this song really difficult to enjoy. And that is why I'm going to have to give it a 5 out of 10. For what it's worth, this song randomly caught fire on Spotify in the middle of April. It got like hundreds of streams in a matter of just like 4 days. Um, it did because of this. It did get to number 4 on Connor's Hot List, so it technically is a hit. But it is the weirdest case I've ever had for getting a hit song that I've ever had in my 3.5 years of making music. And it definitely stinks a lot more of foul play than of the song actually being popular. At first, when I noticed that this was happening, I was convinced that it was a bot. But then because the streams were skyrocketing, but the number of listeners wasn't actually going up. But then the number of listeners actually did go up. I saw like 70 listeners pour in, and they all seem to be from Austin, which is near where I live. So it might not have been a bot, but it's still pretty suspicious. And um, I don't know. Something about how it got popular just rubs me the wrong way. And it's also, as of right now, sitting at over 500 streams, which means it's my number one most streamed song on Spotify for some reason. I lost all my motivation. This song's pretty boring. I think it's a 4 out of 10. I think it's a strong 4 because it's not bad, it's just boring. Um, I produced it with only one instrument, which is I produced it with just one drum pad. The bass is all part of that drum pad and all that. It's another song that isn't mixed very well also. And I think the lyrics are about me losing my motivation and kind of going stagnant, which I was over a year early for that one, but that did eventually end up happening. But most of all, I think this is just a pretty boring song. Um, isn't worth talking about much. Endless Ocean is an instrumental interlude, which I actually like quite a bit. I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10 because um, Endless Ocean, I think, deserves a lot more credit. I actually made this early in 2024, so it's it's an instrumental that I had in my back pocket for a while that I decided to put on this album, and I think it works pretty well early in the album. It's a nice detour from what we get on the first leg of the album. I think it's a serves as a pretty welcome detour from all that. I think it's a pretty good instrumental, which I would listen to unironically outside of the context of the album as well. So I think it deserves a 7 out of 10. The Builder and the Breaker is another pretty uninteresting one. I think it's better than I Lost All My Motivation because at least the beat does have some color in it. But mostly, the only really interesting thing about it is that it showcases more of my singing voice rather than my rapping. But there is a rap verse towards the end, which I forgot to add vocal enhancers to, so it sounds absolutely awful. The fifth track here is Cupcake, and so while this album doesn't have many tracks that I would just call outright bangers, there are a few here and there, and Cupcake is the first one of those. I'm gonna give it an 8. Um, so Cupcake is a pretty interesting one because there's two different beats, one for each verse and the other for the chorus, and they kind of fade in and out. And the hook is just one word. Yeah, which I thought it was pretty interesting. Um, Two guest artists featured on this one, Natalia Garcia and Lincoln Parsons, who both of whose verses I think are kind of subpar, honestly. I don't think they add that much to the track. I think I come across with a lot more energy than they do, but those are just some minor nitpicks. Overall, I think the song is pretty good. It's one of the better mixed ones on the first leg of the album, and I think I just think it's really good. Thomas, I would give a 6 out of 10. Um, I like the subject matter, talking about an old friend from Ohio that I had back in sixth grade. His name was Thomas Price. The song pretty much tells you everything you need to know about this guy. Um, um, and yeah, I think it's a pretty good subject matter, and the beat is also really good. The piano riff on this one is one of the best ones I've ever composed. I have some better piano, there's some better piano riffs on this album, but this is the best one that I composed myself. So, yeah, this was a good one. I'd say maybe it didn't need to be 6 minutes, but that's but I think it's a pretty decent song. All right, the seventh track, Antisocial. So so far we've had a pretty okay first leg of the album. There's some mixing issues on there, but not a dud, I would say yet. Antisocial is, in my opinion, the first bad song on the album, and we'll get to why it's bad in a minute. But first, let's get the positives out of the way. One of the best beats on the entire album. It's a very danceable beat. I like the way I produced it. I like the synth bass that goes on it. Um, I like the drum line. It's a pretty danceable drum line. It's one of the best beats on the entire album. The vocal mixing is not horrendous, which is another positive. And also, I think it's one of the songs where I have a lot of hype in my vocals, but I don't sound phony, which is a problem in a lot of my hype songs is my vocals sound kind of faked, like I'm trying to sound hype, but I'm just trying too hard. And Antisocial is not one of those songs. But there is one massive thing holding it back. Antisocial is the most autistic song in my entire discography. We have finally made it to one of the big criticisms that I have for a lot of the songs on this album, the songwriting. Now, I haven't mentioned the songwriting up till this point because up until this point on the album, the songwriting has been mostly average, mostly standard to above average. But the songwriting on Antisocial is absolutely abysmal. Like there's no getting around the lyrics. Like um a listener who doesn't pay as much attention to the lyrics, I guess maybe could get past it, but for me, it is impossible to get past the lyrics of this song. They are written so badly. I do not like the lyrics of this song at all, and it really kills the song. Um, now, um, I think it's worth mentioning that I have autism. I don't wear it on my sleeve like one certain big soap viewer does, but it's not. I don't think it's worth. I don't think it's needed to keep it a secret either. So, and it shows on this song. The song is about my problems making friends in high school, but it I talk about it in the corniest, most no chill kind of way, and it really, really kills the song for me. Um, I can't give this any more than a 3 out of 10. Um, like all the songs on the first leg of the album, up to this point, some of them have bad mixing, some of them have bad production, but personally, if I had the time to listen to all of Theodore Dog Weeby all the way through, um, I would listen to all the first 6 songs, even despite their issues. Antisocial is the first song of this album that I would personally skip. Um, like I said, someone who isn't me could be able to get past these lyrics, but I can't, unfortunately. And I think it's worth mentioning that part of the reason why I dislike some of the lyrics on some certain songs that I will get to is because I wrote them. For example, if I wrote The Fate of Ophelia off of Taylor Swift's latest album, I would consider it one of my worst written songs ever because it's not the kind of song that I would necessarily write. But in Taylor Swift's case, she knows what she's doing when she's writing it, and she actually sounds good saying these lyrics. So I can give her a pass on that. But that's a main reason why I think, for example, that I think Gray Stripe off of the Birthday album is bad. Is because it's a kind of unnecessary step out of my comfort zone that I don't feel like I was ready to take yet. So I think that's one thing worth pointing out. But yeah, Antisocial is a bad song. Pumpkin Mold. Now, this is another song where the mixing kills it. This is not mixed very well. In fact, it's probably the worst mixed song on the entire album, even worse than Burned, which is a pretty badly mixed song in itself. Um, I think I found myself taking inspiration from Billie Eilish's Bad Guy with the melody of the hook and just the general overall vibe of the song. But if you want to listen to a song like this, just listen to Bad Guy instead. It's that easy. Um, Personally, I like the subject matter though. The song highlights 3 of the funniest moments that I experienced in high school in class. There was the funny moment where Mr. Ashford found moldy pumpkins on his shelf. The moment where one of my classmates burnt the Easy Mac because they forgot to put water in it for some reason. And the funniest of all, the funny moment where my classmate Gus was chilling in algebra class and randomly found a dead fish sitting in his backpack. Yes, that is a real event that happened. And to this day, I am blown away. 3 years later, I'm still blown away by the fact that something as crazy as someone in class finding a dead fish chilling inside of their backpack, something like that could actually possibly happen and actually did happen. I'm still blown away by that. That was an unreal funny moment. So I can't really give this song any less than a 5 out of 10. It's worse than the other 2 songs I gave out a 5 out of 10, but it's still just a five. It's still can't give it any lower than a 5 out of 10 because I do enjoy it. Besides its horrendous mixing, but outside of that, uh, um, I don't think I can give this song any higher than a 5 out of 10 either. All right, Pretender. This is Nervinx's favorite song off the album, and I have to disagree, unfortunately. I think it's kind of an overrated song. Um, this is the first of the number one hits on Connor's Hot List off this album. Um, so, um, you can tell that this is inspired by Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, the diss track on Drake. Everyone knows that song, and when you listen to Pretender, the influence is obvious. Like it's clearly going for a Not Like Us type song. Um, so Pretender, um, I think the production is kind of uninteresting. It's one of the catchier beats on the album, but I don't think it does very much, and I think it's also slightly too quiet as well. Um, those are just minor nitpicks, but I think those are worth pointing out. I think it's one of my strongest songwriting cuts on the album, though. In fact, it's probably the strongest songwriting cuts on the album. So let's get into this because this song was released as part of I guess you could say a trilogy of diss tracks. There was Mansions, Evil Caden, and Pretender. Mansions and Evil Caden will come later on the album. We'll go over those. Pretender was the third of the three diss tracks. Um, and so basically what was happening was so there's this friend that I have, well that I had, well guess I technically yes I do still have, but that I met on the golf team. Her name is Chelsea Moore, and I adore her. She's a really good friend, and um, she also has other friends on the golf team. One of them is this guy named Landon Califels. So one day, Landon decided to become really, really obsessed with the idea of me and Chelsea dating and having a relationship. Um, and I think it was, I guess he just thought that we looked cute together, which I can't lie, he's not wrong. But just because me and Chelsea look cute together doesn't mean we're meant for each other. And me and Chelsea both knew, and I think Landon knew as well, that neither myself nor Chelsea was interested in a relationship at all. But despite that, he kept persisting, and no matter how many times we told him to stop, he kept trying to push us together. And ultimately, it climaxed with Pretender, which is one of the best songwriting songs on the album. I like all the jabs I took at Landon, especially in that what I think is the third verse where I take jabs at his diss track on some random dude named Julian who he doesn't like, and I mention that hey, maybe Julian was right. I think it's a pretty well written and clever diss against Landon, and it worked. He did backtrack from the whole me and Chelsea dating thing and apologize immediately after the song was released. So yeah, it worked. And eventually he started teasing like he was going to drop a response diss against me, which I actually address in a later song on the album. We'll get to that. Pretender is a light 8 because no, it's not the best song on the album. I think Cupcake is better also. But it's one of the best songwriting cuts on the album. Um, and it's one of the catchiest, even though I think the hook is kind of wordy. I think it doesn't really have a hook. It's just a wordy chorus, which is yeah. Friday Night Goofiness. So it's another good one. These three songs from Pretender to Moon are all good. So Friday Night Goofiness is another strong songwriting cut on the album. It's pretty introspective. It's the first time since the birthday era where I mentioned She Who Must Not Be Named, who is this crush I had in eighth grade that I fucked up so bad with that I eventually had to sign what was basically the on-campus version of a restraining order, and I refused to say her name on the channel because I don't want to publicly embarrass her. So those of you who are thinking of commenting, mentioning her name, I will delete your comment if you do that. It's for her sake. So, um, but also in the second verse, some pretty good songwriting, and the third verse is talking about how I'm not really doing it for money or fame or anything. I'm just doing it to have fun. Um, I think it's a pretty good songwriting. The writing does get slightly corny at times, but not unbearable levels of corny like an antisocial. So, um, and I think the hook is slightly clunky, but also has a pretty good melody. The thing that I think holds the song back the most is the production. I loved that piano sample. That piano sample that you hear in the background, I loved it when I came across it. I immediately was like, man, I have to put this in a song. And and I did eventually get the chance to put it in a song on Friday Night Goofiness, but unfortunately I don't think I did it justice with how good that sample was. Now, the sample is the only thing you can hear on the chorus, but on the verses, there's also this sax melody, which I think is kind of annoying. It crawls under my skin a little bit. Um, I think if it was only the piano sample, this would have been a better song. But if I'd left the sax out of it, it would have been a better song. But um, yeah, Friday Night Goofiness I think goes in between Pretender and Cupcake, as an 8 out of 10, a decent 8. Moon. Moon is another hype song, which I think is pretty good. Um, I love the two repeating verses. The verses I actually come across with energy and don't sound phony, which is a good thing. That's something that I've struggled with on some of my more high energy songs. Um, and I think the production backing the verses is really good. Once again, there's another really good energetic piano sample and some really good drums backing the verses. But the hook, I think, is kind of obnoxious. It's just me saying moon over and over again with a pretty hype tone of voice. I think um I think I could have toned it down a little bit with all the moon stuff, and I think the production backing the hook, which is different from the production backing the verses, is pretty weak. So Moon, I think, is a good song otherwise, but I think the hook holds it back a little bit. So I'm going to give it it's a strong 7 to a light 8. It's worse than Pretender. Um, it's better than Endless Ocean though. It's a light 8. We take a big dip in quality following this though. The Same Things is another song that Nervinx was a lot fonder of in his review, and I'm going to have to respectfully disagree on this one. The Same Things, the beat is boring and the lyrics are clunky and corny. The hook on this one is so wordy that it's basically not a hook, and I guess while it's not one of the when compared to some of the other bad writing cuts on this album, like for example, an Antisocial or there's another one that we'll be getting to later on the track list that also has really bad writing. Technically two, but I guess you could say on the second one the content is more bad. That's kind of subtle foreshadowing there. Um, but on the Same Things, if you compare them to some of the other bad writing cuts on the album, the Same Things isn't actually that bad. But there's some embarrassing word choices, and it's definitely one of the bottom five writing cuts on the album. Um, and no Nervinx, none of the big soap references are actually that interesting, unfortunately. Not in my opinion. Um, I'm kind of torn between a strong 3 and a light 4 on this one. I think I'm leaning more towards light 4 because at least the beat isn't bad. It's just boring. And compared to some of the other bad writing on this album, the same things is pretty tolerable. Um, but yeah, it's definitely one of the weakest tracks on the album. Phoebe Weeby. This is the second of the three #1 hits on this album from Connor's Hot List. This is gonna live on in my legacy as basically another SHPOT where it doesn't have the most fans, but has the loudest fans. The people that like Phoebe Weeby love Phoebe Weeby. And I'm talking about it's not towards a normal demographic that listens to my music either. It's like people associated with my brother and sister, associated more with Kids Academy, which is the daycare that my mom owns. The people that work there are in love with this song. Um, um, I think it's just personally, I think it's one of my least favorite of my songs that became hits though. This is another song where the mixing holds it back, yeah, also, but I think also the song could have been produced better. Um, I like the tuba riff, but and also the bass, but I think the drums could have been better on this one. Um, and I think the song isn't that mixed that well, but I don't think the lyrics are bad in any way. And I do like that at the end of the verses, I sniff like Phoebe Weeby. I think that's kind of funny. Um, I think it's better than Burned. And the Builder and the Breaker and all that. It's a strong 5. I would say. The Falling. This is a pretty basic track, honestly. It's pretty basic songwriting, basic beat. Um, it's just basic everything. I'm gonna put it right in the middle of the 5 out of 10 tier because it's it's just it's basic. Like you can't really love it or hate it because it's just completely right in the middle, I would say. Poisonous Potato. This is a slapper. Um it's got one of the most interesting beats on the album. One minor nitpick is I think that the horns on the hook could have been mixed slightly better, but it's not mixed, like I said, it's not mixed horrendously like on a song like Burned or Pumpkin Mold. And I think the lyrics are fine. Lyrics are fine on my parts of the album. We'll get to the other part, I should say. But um it's also interestingly the first song since the Gamma era where the clapping is actually by me. I actually made the claps on the verse on the beat with the of that backs the verses, which I thought was pretty fun and creative. Um, but we haven't gotten to the thing that actually makes this song hill though. Miss Killian absolutely smashed her verse. This is like a top 3 guest verse in my catalog from Miss Killian. Miss Killian is dissing Coach Fambro and like um all over this verse, taking some really clever jabs at Coach Fambro, and she comes across she comes across so well on this. Her performance is so good. Like Miss Killian has um Miss Killian, I would say, is the Connor Super Goofy guest feature of the year. I would say on Poisonous Potato. I wish this song was a bigger hit than it was. This is technically the lead single for the album as well. Um, Considering that the album cycle only officially started at Wave 3. Poisonous Potato is a 9 out of 10. It's the best song we've seen so far. Goes Up, I think, is one of the weaker ones. It's another hype track. It's another hype one. But I think the sample that I used and the drums that I used are kind of weird for a hype song. It doesn't necessarily work that well. And I think the lyrics are basic and the vocals aren't that great. Um, but it's not a bad song. I think it's better than Phoebe Weeby. It's better than all of these. I think it's a strong five to a light six. I think I'll say light six because I think it's significantly better than the songs over here. Goofy Boys 2. Now, I would say that it doesn't have the nostalgia value of the original. I can't even say the original Goofy Boys because this isn't a remake of Goofy Boys. It's a sequel to Goofy Boys. Somehow managed to get Daniel Van Cleve on this track because he was in my government class, and I think Daniel Van Cleve's song is the weakest part of the song. It's honestly not that bad. But the beat is really, really good on this song, and I think it comes across once again with a lot of energy. And I also do like the outro, which I kind of took inspiration from the outro of Kendrick Lamar's DNA for this song, which I think is pretty interesting. This is a decent to strong seven, and it's better than Endless. It's definitely better than Endless Ocean as well. Mansions, not only the biggest hit on the album, but the biggest hit of my senior year of high school, and probably a top five hit, like top five most popular song in my catalog. I don't think it quite reaches the level of a song like Friends in My Math Class or Goofy Boys, but it's up there. It's up there. It's at least more popular. It was at least more popular at its peak than Easel Weasel was, which is another one of the upper echelon of my hits. Honestly, I think Mansions is a kind of overrated song. Um, it's at least a 7 out of 10. I think it's better than Endless Ocean, but not as good as Goofy Boys 2. Um, I think the production on this one is kind of basic, that it's pretty bass driven, it's pretty energetic. Once again, it's another song where I come across with energy but don't sound like I'm faking it. I don't sound like I'm trying too hard. Um, it's a pretty good song. Decent 7. Sipping with the Enemy. Now, remember back during the same things where I said we were going to get to another one of the bad writing cuts a little bit later in the track list? This is it. Now, I made the beat for this song back in right at the end of 2023. So it's a really old beat. I remember loving it when I first made it. I loved the samples that I used. I I just loved the beat and I wanted to put it somewhere on one of my albums. But I think I just don't think I could have really written a song that worked well with that beat. It's just not a Connor or Super Goofy type beat. And I think that's what holds it back. Um, in the first place. I think this beat would have done better on one of my scrap beats mixtapes, which I eventually took down because I don't think they really fit in my catalog anywhere. But the lyrics on this one are really corny as well. I don't think they're as corny as Antisocial, sure, but I think I also jammed the beat too full of SpongeBob Steel stings, which I probably should have taken out of the beat before I officially released the song. But yeah, that's just a minor nitpick. But yeah, I think the songwriting is pretty embarrassing on this song. Um, yeah, it's a 2 out of 10. It's a 2 out of 10. It's the worst song we've seen so far. But, and at the time I reviewed it, it was my least favorite song on the album, but we actually have a song later on that I now think is worse than this. And we will get to that. You might be wondering what that is, but we will get there. Trust me. Over and over. Remember I said how One of the biggest issues with a lot of my hype songs is I sound like I'm trying too hard to be hyped and I'm not really doing it authentically. That is a huge problem on this song. I think it's um so I think Nervinx had a good criticism of this song, basically saying that it's just a worse Mansions. And I think the beat on this song is better than the beat on Mansions, actually. But the thing that does actually make me agree with Nervinx that, yeah, this is just a worse Mansions is the vocal performance. It sounds like I'm trying too hard. And the lyrics aren't bad, um, they're just basic. But they are actually kind of interesting. They're about a friend who keeps giving mixed signals and can't decide whether they want me to be close to them and continue being their friend or whether they want space. So I think it's pretty interesting in that regards, but yeah, I think the vocal performance is kind of try hard and um yeah, it's worse than no, it's better than Pumpkin Mold. Um but it's worse than the Builder and the Breaker. It's a light 5. Hey Landon. So basically, this is the song that I mentioned earlier that addresses Landon kind of doing that response diss at me. And I think that honestly, I think as a diss against Landon, Hey Landon is worse than Pretender in pretty much every way. The lyrics aren't as good on this one, and the beat is pretty boring. I'd say the beat ranges around the echelon of the same things as a kind of a kind of basic production. Um, I um I think it's a pretty uninteresting song outside of the fact that it's a diss track. It's a light 6 for me. Super goofball. This is another one like The Falling where I think it's too basic, really. I think it's too much of like just a basic Connor super goofy song to really love or to really hate. Um, I think it could have been mixed better, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think it's just a pretty middle of the road song. Um, the thing that makes this worse than The Falling, though, even though I think it's pretty much just as basic, is the fact that um, the mixing is worse on this than it is on The Falling. I think it's right behind The Falling, though. I think it's right behind The Falling. Party in Miss Baker's Room. This is an interesting one. This isn't really a song. It's more like an interlude. So basically, the gist of it is I wanted to do another one of those, like you know those interludes on Impossible Logic, the homeroom celebration, Good Morning interludes, where the beat just plays in the background and the main focal point of the track is what's the conversations that are going on in my homeroom. I wanted to do another one of those just for nostalgia, but except in Band Lab, whereas the songs on Impossible Logic were just recorded. So that's basically what the song is going for, or what the interlude is going for here. Um, so I really need to untangle my thoughts on this one because you can't really judge it as a song, really, because it's not. It's not a song, it's an interlude. It's basically just a conversation in my homeroom. So, and in terms of the music backing it, I think it's pretty basic. It's not a bad beat, it's just a pretty standard dance beat. So, you can't really judge it based on how good the beat is either. So, I'm going to have to judge this song based on what's happening in my homeroom during the recording. And yeah, the stuff that's happening in my homeroom during the recording is really humiliating, which is why I think this track is bad. Um, First things first, let's get the elephant and the embarrassing elephant in the room out of the way. So, on this track, you can hear me going over like the candidates that have either been for the friend of the year and most valuable teacher race, which um most of you watching aren't gonna know what it is, what that is, and I'm not gonna bother telling you what it was. But yeah, it's basically this thing where I would have all my friends and teachers compete to be my number one, and like there were like different rounds where you would continue getting eliminated, and eventually, like if you survive long enough, you would like be the number one and then you'd win. And I was going over all the teachers and friends that have been eliminated and the ones that were moving on. Like I was counting down the rankings, which already by itself is a pretty embarrassing thing to include on record. But I'm going over all these teachers and stuff, and as soon as when I'm mentioning their names, my classmates are booing. Nuh-uh, no, hell no, we're not doing that. Um, this is less embarrassing, but it comes up during the recording about me potentially having a crush on Chelsea Moore, that friend from the golf team. I didn't then, and I don't now. But that's beside the point. The point is that there's some embarrassing, humiliating conversations on this record, and and there's just it's just pretty difficult for me to listen to the stuff that we're talking about on here. Um, so like here's the thing. If I was really, really dedicated to listening to this 30 song album all the way through, if I had an hour and 40 minutes out of my day, I could just sit down and listen to all of this album, and I tried hard enough, I could maybe tolerate a song like Antisocial or Sipping with the Enemy or like some one of those like really bad songs on the album. But I have limits. Party in Miss Baker's Room is just too um yeah. This is the worst thing that we are going to be seeing today. 1 out of 10. Evil Caden. Thank the Lord that we jump up in quality after this and we don't get even close to this bad for the rest of the album. This last leg is actually pretty good. So Evil Caden is actually the best song that we've seen so far. I think it's better than Poisonous Potato. It's a 9 out of 10. It's actually a really good diss track against this guy who was in my aquatic science class at the time, Caden Medina, um, going over some of the things that he said and did during my freshman year back when I had him in my English class, and kind of just jabbing at him and throwing insults at him. It's a pretty fun, kind of lighthearted, cheeky diss track with a really good beat. It's one of the best beats on the album as well. And yeah, it's really really good. Um, One of the best tracks on the album for sure. I really like it. Um, all right. Um, All My Fault. So, um, So All My Fault is a pretty interesting song. First, let's get it sonically out of the way. It's definitely one of the best mixed songs on the album. It's one of the better mixed ones. The beat is pretty danceable. I like the beat to it as well, but I think the best part of it is its lyrics. Because it's a pretty complicated story with this song. Because so um it's a pretty. So let me just lay it out for you. So throughout my 4 years of high school, my senior year it kind of calmed down a little bit, but for the first 3 years of high school, there was a huge issue where we had fights. Like there was a huge fighting issue. We would during the worst times, we would basically have a fight like every other week. It was that bad. And at the end of my freshman year, fights were happening so often that the school had to really crack down on it. So um, let me give you some more background. So there's this place called Impact in my district, which is basically the district's version of prison, where you would go there if you did something really bad at school. Um, um, you would be sent there for a certain period of days, and there would be no phones. You would have to wear like a uniform and stuff, and like you would have to be silent the entire time. There was absolutely zilch talking there. That's what I've heard. Um, and for all 4 years of high school, when I was there, it was always a policy where if you got in a fight, you would immediately get sent there. Um, But at the end of my freshman year, things were getting so bad that the school had to crack down on it even further. And it turned from anyone who got in a fight to anyone who was filming the fight or was in the area or was seen in the video, regardless of how innocent they would all go to impact. And I think that was pretty extreme, but I guess fair considering how out of control it was getting. And it was during this time period where I got trapped in the bathroom while a fight was happening. And I think it was only because of the fact that I could be seen in the video screaming at the people filming to stop. And also based on the fact that I was so basically so famous at the school that even the people in the front office knew me and knew that I wouldn't do shit like that. Um, I think those two reasons, I was able to get out of there scot-free and not face any consequences. No ISS, no impact, nothing. And all my fault is written from the perspective of someone who was from a different person who is in my. This is just a theoretical like scenario, by the way, but it's written from the perspective of someone else who was in the exact same situation as me but wasn't so lucky and ended up facing the consequences just like everyone else. One of the best songwriting cuts on the album. I think it's a strong 7. It's up there with Goofy Boys too. I think it's slightly better. Say what you want. All right. Um so this song here. This is another kind of like a Friday night goofiness situation where I found a sample so unbelievably good that I was immediately like, man, I have to use it in a song. Like, immediately. But unlike Friday night goofiness, where I mentioned that I really couldn't quite do it justice, I think on Say What You Want, I actually was able to do it justice. This is yet again another song that's basically like a hype song. So I found this really, really soulful, energetic choir sample um, that sounded really good, and I loved it. Really wanted to put it on a song. And so I found like the perfect song. I thought of like the perfect song that this could go on. Um, um, the perfect kind of song this could go on. And the beat is just really, really good. And it's another hype song where I'm able to sound energetic without sounding phony. Which is another one. The hook is the best hook on the album. Full stop, best hook on the album. The verse is also really good. The beat is great. Dare I say it's a 10 out of 10 song. But the real thing that put it over the top, wasn't the beat or the vocals or the choir or the really awesome choir sample, but it was the time in which I made the song. Now this is reminding me that I really need to do that senior year documentary retrospective video. But it was made at a time where my senior year was really starting to catch fire. Like it was made right at the sweet. I made it right at the sweet spot where right after senior activity day, when right at the ignition, where things were really starting to catch fire and get really, really good. And because of that, I associate really positive memories with making the song. So, like, that actually puts it over the top. Not only is it a 10 out of 10 song, but I go back and forth between whether this or my Jingle Bell Don't Jingle is the best song that I released in 2024 and the best song I released of my senior year. Actually, I think in terms of my senior year, in terms of songs I would release after this, I think Hooligans might be better, but yeah, say what you want. 10 out of 10 song, like full stop. I like fight me on this one. I think it's honestly I honestly understand that this is not your favorite song on the album because the thing that put it over the top is yeah, it's personal to me and I think the song has like a lot of personal memories and stuff. But yeah. Um let's move on. Trolls. Trolls has a pretty bouncy beat. I like the beat on Trolls. Um it's one of the bounciest songs in my catalog. Um it's um I think lyrics and the subject matter are pretty basic though. It's not bad. It's just basic. And I like the piano sample that I put in. Not necessarily like a Friday Night Goofiness level piano sample, but it's a pretty good piano sample that I had as the hook, which I thought was pretty creative. Um Trolls. Pretty basic song about just useless, stupid people who like to dedicate a lot of their time to pointless trolling. It's a pretty light-hearted song. I think it's better than Endless Oceans, better than Mansions. Yeah, it's right. It's like here. It's right a decent seven. What's Love For? Now, this is a really solid idea for a song, but I found a video of myself from 2017 singing a song to my cat Spot. Yes, that was during the time that I actually had Spot. We still lived in Ohio back then. Um, I found a video of myself singing a song to Spot, and I decided to sample it and make a song out of it. Unfortunately, I think it's one of the weaker songs on the album, unfortunately, because first of all, the first minute is just the plain song from just the plain audio from the video of just me singing to Spot. There's like nothing behind it. And I kind of regret letting that go on for an entire minute. But once the actual meat of the song kicks in, I think it's pretty underwhelming. The beat is kind of boring, and the verse, the one single verse on the song is pretty basic. It's not bad. It's just a basic verse that doesn't really have any substance to it. It's pretty uninteresting. Um, and yeah. Um, it's better than the same thing. It's better than I lost all my motivation as well. In fact, I would probably say it's better than Pumpkin Mold as well. But it's not as good as Over and Over. It's a light five. Economics rap song. I think this song is also kind of overrated. It's not that great. It's certainly one of the better ones, but it's not that great. I think the production on this song is kind of boring. It's just a bass beat. It does have a pretty interesting drop at the end of the verses, but overall, I think the production is pretty boring, and I think the concept of rapping about the fundamentals of economics is kind of corny. I don't think it's a badly written song, like a song like Antisocial or Sipping with the Enemy or anything. Um, I don't think it's badly written. It's just the concept of the lyrics is corny. So I think it's better than everything in the 5 out of 10 tier. I think it's a light six. It's worse than Hey Landon. Sitting by the window at 6 a.m. It's a pretty conceptual closer. Um, it's a pretty conceptual song about falling asleep by the window at 6 a.m., dreaming about a day at school in my school cafeteria, and all my old collaborators and like my friends and teachers walk up to me and we have conversations about the my music career and like reminiscing on the past and stuff. Um, Honestly sounds pretty boring to me in hindsight. Not the song, but like what's happening in the dream is kind of boring, but still pretty nostalgic and stuff like that. Um, and then eventually at the end of the song, I wake up, thank everybody who joined me on my artistic journey up until that point, say goodbye, and let this kind of somber piano outro finish it off and finish off the album. It's a pretty bittersweet ending, and I think the only thing holding this song back, in my opinion, is it's a slightly worse mix. Like, it's not an awful mix, but it's a slightly worse one. It's not as good as Poisonous Potato. I don't even think it's as good as Cupcake, but it's better than all the others. It's a decent to strong 8. Yeah, that's me ranking every song on Theodore Dog Weeby just like Nervinx did. Um Let me know what you think of this tier list and if there were any surprises. I know Party in Miss Baker's Room being a 1 out of 10 is probably a pretty huge surprise, honestly. But let me know if that actually did surprise you, if there were any other surprises on this tier list. But yeah, I stand by my rating of a 6 out of 10. I think the bulk of it is average to above average, but there's a few pretty big bangers on this one and also a few duds. That's about it. See ya.